Hi, I'm Dick Townsend, and welcome to Reminiscences of a Plant Manager. Over my nearly 40-year career in the chemical industry, I've faced many challenges, but none were as formidable as Hurricane Ike in 2008. This series shares the lessons I learned during that disaster to help current and future plant managers prepare for the unexpected. In this first video, we'll set the stage by looking at Hurricane Ike's magnitude and impact. On September 13, 2008, Hurricane Ike made landfall as a Cat 2 hurricane with sustained winds of 110 miles per hour. However, the true threat wasn't just the wind, it was the storm surge. The surge reached over 17 feet in Galveston and 12 feet in Beaumont, creating a catastrophic flood scenario at the plant. Warnings from the National Weather Service couldn't have been clearer. Persons not heeding evacuation orders will face certain death. This was down at the coast. Tragically, Hurricane Ike was blamed for 195 deaths, with 112 in the U.S. alone. Closer to home, one of our employees lost a family member to the floodwaters. It was a stark reminder of the stakes we were dealing with. This is a shot of our plant site. It's a large chemical complex on the Gulf Coast in Beaumont, Texas. We are co-located with our sister refinery. As part of our hurricane prep, we had been through Hurricane Rita a year or so earlier, and Rita had turned out to be a wind event. It was a high winds, but there was little to no storm surge associated with it. We suffered damage from that event, mostly power loss and cooling tower. One of our cooling towers collapsed during that. But the damage scale relative to what we saw with Ike was orders of magnitude lower. So we had some experience with hurricanes. As part of our protocol, we would work jointly with our co-located refinery and meet daily to discuss the status of the weather and our plans to coordinate between the refinery and the chemical plant on our shutdown plans. And so each day we would go in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'd get an update from our safety department on the weather report. And basically we were getting, it was going to be a lot of wind and rain, but there was no mention of storm surge. And back at this point in time, storm surge was not well understood, and the predictability of the levels that you were looking at it was something new at this point. So each day we would go in, as I said, and get an update. And our plan, based on what we were hearing early on, was that we would take our plant down into a safe park mode where we took all of the feeds out of the plant. We would no longer be producing product. We would get everyone out of the plant other than a small hurricane ride-out crew, which would stay in to just keep an eye on the place. And we would leave the power on and a few utilities to make it easier to restart once the storm passed. That was the plan early on. But as the week progressed, things remained relative the same until Friday morning. We went in and we were getting our update. High wind, rain, and then storm surge 10 to 15 feet. That's the first that we had heard about storm surge, and we all assumed immediately that it was talking about the surge at the coast in Galveston. But we got on the phone and we called the service that we used for our weather predictions, and we gave them our latitude and longitude, and they said no, that the storm surge of 10 to 15 feet was going to be in Beaumont. And if you see this picture that you're looking at now, you see us surrounded by water. Well, that's the Nature's River. It is connected to the Gulf of Mexico. So any storm surge that we would see in the Gulf of Mexico would make its way up the river and impact us. We had our plant was only 3 feet above sea level, and we had a levee system around the plant that was 10 feet high, but we've never been tested to that level before. And with a prediction of 10 to 15 feet in Beaumont, we couldn't take the risk. So we decided to change our shutdown plan, get everyone out of the plant, including the ride-out crew, and shut down the power and bring everything down to an off level. And I tell people that was the best decision that we ever made. I made it late on Friday or early noonish on Friday, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to get down, but it was a good decision based on what happened later. The next morning, the ride-out crew, which was located in the refinery, I had a radio. I was staying in my home. Some of the leadership team stayed in Beaumont in our homes and rode out the storm because it's our responsibility to keep things under control and to manage the recovery effort. And so after a windy, howling night in my home, I got on the radio and got in contact with the ride-out crew and was basically told, your plant is full. And here's a picture of taken from the refinery into the chemical plant so that you can see the magnitude of the devastation that we experienced. Here's another view just showing the magnitude. There was flooding in parts of the refinery, and you'll see the chemical plant in the background. We had a lot of empty rail cars in the plant because our initial plan was to be prepared to restart as quickly as possible after the storm passed. And this was based on our early understanding that this would be a wind and rain event and not a surge event. This is our main administration building underwater, as you can see. We had over 50 vehicles in the plant, all flooded out. This is our ethylene unit control room, aromatics unit control room, office area, underwater. Our plant entrance was the one area open, and our plans called for putting a concrete barrier that we had used in previous storms. We put that barrier in after everyone is evacuated out of the plant. It's the last thing that we do. We load it up with sandbags, and then we put heavy equipment behind it, and it had served us well on all previous storms up to this point. But under this storm, it did not survive, and we had a breach. This is our laboratory. It was flooded. Another shot. More flooding. More flooding. All vehicles were lost. Rail cars came off of the trucks. And just so you know, by the DOT regulations, before you can ever use these rail cars again, all of these trucks have to be replaced. And so you can't just put them back on top of the wheels and go on. They have to be replaced there once the salt water has touched them. Just another shot of the units. More units, more water. More units, more water. Okay. With upwards of 10 feet of salt water in your plant, what do? This is what we were faced with. Not to mention, there was no power at the plant or in the city. We had no telephone service. We had inconsistent cell service. Much of the city was unpassable and unsafe. Hotels were damaged and not open. Restaurants were damaged and not open. Many employees were dealing with their own problems, flooded houses, no roofs, cars damaged, and many other plants were damaged in the area and we're sure to be in competition for resources and materials. So this is the first of the series, and we'll stop at this point. And the next video will pick up and show you how we began to organize to deal with the cleanup and then the restoration activity. I hope you enjoyed this slide. Thank you.